For 8 years, the girl lived in silence. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. Her father, a mafia boss who controlled half the city, spent millions, flew across the world, begged specialists to look again. They all shrugged. Then a maid noticed something no one else did, and what she found inside that child's ear will leave you speechless. Marco Romano was more than a billionaire. He was a crime lord, private jets, fortress mansions, connections that could make enemies disappear with a single phone call. He ruled the underworld with an iron fist, but he was powerless to help his daughter, Sofia. 8 years old, born deaf, never heard a sound. Marco tried everything. Johns Hopkins, Switzerland, Tokyo. Specialists who charged thousands per hour. They ran tests, scans, procedures. All of them said the same thing. Irreversible. Accept it. But Marco Romano didn't accept anything, because Sofia was all he had left. His wife, Catherine, died giving birth to that little girl. So Marco kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer, even though men like him don't usually pray. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the woman he just hired to clean his floors. Victoria Williams, 27 years old, black, beautiful, and desperate. No degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to survive. Back in Newark, her grandmother was lying in a nursing home bed. The bills were stacking up like a tower Victoria couldn't stop from growing. 3 months behind. If she didn't pay, they'd transfer her grandmother to a state facility. The kind of place where people are forgotten, where you become a number instead of a name. Victoria's grandmother had raised her, took her in after her parents died, fed her when there was nothing, prayed over her when life felt impossible. That woman deserved better. So Victoria took this job, maid at a mafia boss's estate. She didn't care about the danger, didn't care about the power. She just needed the paycheck. But then she saw something. Something in Sofia's ear. Something dark. Every specialist had missed it. Or maybe they'd seen it and chose to ignore it. One evening, while Marco was away on business, Victoria made a decision. A decision that would either save that little girl's life or destroy her own. In a mansion built on secrets and violence, a young woman with nothing but faith in her heart was about to perform a miracle. And when a mafia boss discovers what she's done, he'll have to choose. Kill the woman who helped his daughter, or break every rule he's ever lived by. What happened next? You need to see it for yourself. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. The Romano estate stretched across 40 acres of Connecticut land, but it wasn't just a mansion. It was a fortress. High walls, security gates that could withstand a small army, guards stationed at every entrance, their eyes sharp, their hands never far from their weapons. From the outside, it looked like power made visible. Georgian columns reaching toward the sky, windows that sparkled in the sunlight, gardens trimmed to absolute perfection. But inside, there was only silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like rest. This silence was heavy, thick, like something had died and no one had buried it yet. Servants moved through the hallways without speaking. Their footsteps were soft, careful. They'd learned quickly. Mr. Romano didn't like noise. No music played in that house. No television chatter. No laughter bouncing off the walls. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a father was drowning. Marco Romano sat in his study most evenings, staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. There she was, Catherine, his wife, her smile frozen in oil paint, her eyes still bright, still alive. Next to her, a younger version of himself, looking hopeful, looking whole. And between them, Sofia, 3 years old in the portrait. Before Marco understood that his daughter would never hear her mother's name, Catherine died the day Sofia was born. Complications, the doctors called it. Too much bleeding, too little time. Marco held her hand while the light left her eyes. She'd been trying to say something. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Just like their daughter. Marco never forgave himself. If he'd chosen a different hospital. If he'd demanded better care. If he'd been paying closer attention. Maybe she'd still be here. Maybe Sofia would be different. The guilt sat on his chest like a stone he couldn't lift. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He spent money, millions of dollars, the best specialists on Earth, flights across oceans, hotels that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. Every doctor said the same thing. Your daughter's deafness is congenital. There's nothing we can do. You need to accept this. Accept it. How could he accept that his daughter would live in silence forever? How could he accept that Sofia would never hear him say, "I'm sorry your mother isn't here"? So Marco kept searching, kept writing checks, kept hoping that somewhere out there, someone had the answer. He didn't realize the answer wasn't coming from a specialist. It was coming from someone he'd never think to look at twice. Someone who was about to walk through his front door with nothing but faith in her heart and bills she couldn't pay. Her name was Victoria, and she was about to change everything. Victoria Williams arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything feel heavier than it should. She stood at the gate of the Romano estate, clutching her bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This was it, her last chance. The gates buzzed open slowly, and Victoria walked up the long driveway, her shoes clicking against the cobblestones. Each step felt like it carried the weight of everything she was about to lose. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, met her at the door. Stern face, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgave nothing. "You're Victoria." It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria kept her voice steady. Mrs. Patterson looked her up and down. "You'll clean. You'll stay quiet. You'll keep to yourself. Mr. Romano doesn't like disruptions, especially around his daughter." Victoria nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed. "Because the last girl didn't. She tried to get too friendly with the girl. Thought she could help. She was gone within a week." Victoria swallowed. "I'm just here to work, ma'am." Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Follow me." As they walked through the mansion, Victoria kept her eyes down, but she couldn't help noticing things. The silence so thick it felt alive. The way the other servants moved without speaking, without smiling. The heaviness that hung in the air like fog that wouldn't lift. And then she saw her, a small girl sitting on the marble staircase, arranging toy cars in a perfect line. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge anyone. Her shoulders were hunched, her movements careful, precise. But what caught Victoria's attention was something else. The way the girl kept touching her right ear, just briefly, almost like a habit, and the tiny wince that crossed her face each time she did. Victoria's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before. She didn't say anything, just kept walking. But her heart whispered something she couldn't ignore. Pay attention. Days passed. Victoria cleaned floors, wiped windows, folded linens. She kept her head down like Mrs. Patterson told her, but she couldn't stop watching Sofia. Every morning, the same routine. The girl would sit alone in the sunroom, surrounded by model airplanes and puzzle pieces. Her world was small, contained, safe. No one bothered her there. The other servants avoided her, not out of cruelty, but out of fear, like her silence was something they might catch. Some whispered that the girl was cursed, that losing her mother at birth had taken her hearing with her. Superstition, that's what it was. But Victoria saw something different. She saw a child who was desperately lonely. A girl who sat by windows and pressed her small hand against the glass, watching the world move without her. She saw the way Sofia would look at her father sometimes when Marco walked past without stopping. How her little shoulders would sink just a bit lower. She saw how Sofia touched her ear over and over, wincing each time, and no one noticed, or maybe they'd stopped noticing long ago. One afternoon, Victoria was dusting the hallway near the sunroom when she saw Sofia struggling with a model airplane wing. Her small fingers couldn't get the piece to fit. Frustration creased her face. Victoria shouldn't interfere. Mrs. Patterson's warning echoed in her mind. But before she could stop herself, Victoria knelt down and gently took the wing. She fitted it into place with a soft click. Sofia looked up at her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then something happened. The tiniest smile. Just a flicker at the corner of her mouth. Victoria's heart cracked wide open. She smiled back, gave a small wave. Sofia waved in return. That night, Victoria lay in her bed thinking about that wave. Such a small thing, but it meant everything. The next morning, she left something on the stairs where Sofia always sat. A folded paper bird, simple, made from scrap paper she'd found in the kitchen. She didn't wait to see if Sofia would take it. But the following day, the bird was gone. In its place, a note. 2 words in shaky handwriting. Thank you. Victoria pressed that note to her chest and closed her eyes. She whispered into the quiet, Lord, let me help this child. Show me how. She didn't know it yet, but God was already answering. And the answer would cost her everything she had. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Victoria and Sofia developed their own language. Small things, secret things. Victoria would leave candy wrapped in gold foil. Sofia would leave drawings of airplanes. Victoria learned her signs, not the formal ones her tutors taught, but the personal ones Sofia had made up herself. The way she tapped her chest twice meant she was happy. The way she pointed to the sky meant she was thinking about stars. The way she pressed both palms together meant she felt safe. And slowly, Sofia started using that last sign around Victoria. Safe. Victoria treasured that more than anything. But not everyone was pleased. One evening, Mrs. Patterson cornered Victoria in the kitchen. I've seen you with the girl. Victoria's stomach dropped. Ma'am, I don't. Mrs. Patterson's voice was sharp as glass. I warned you. Mr. Romano has rules. Staff doesn't get close to Sofia. I'm not trying to cause trouble, Victoria said quietly. She's just lonely. That's not your concern. Mrs. Patterson stepped closer. You're here to clean, not to mother that child. Not to fix what can't be fixed. Victoria bit her tongue. Fix what can't be fixed. That's what everyone said. Even here, even in this house where the girl lived, they'd all given up. If Mr. Romano finds out you've been interfering, Mrs. Patterson continued, her eyes cold, you'll be gone. No references. No second chances. Think about that. She walked away, heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. That night, Victoria sat on her bed, staring at the wall. She thought about her grandmother, the bills, the paycheck she desperately needed. She thought about Sofia, her lonely eyes, her pain. She thought about the dark thing she'd seen in Sofia's ear. Mrs. Patterson's words echoed in her mind. Fix what can't be fixed. But what if it could be fixed? What if everyone was wrong? Victoria picked up her Bible and held it close. Lord, I don't know what to do. I can't lose this job, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing. She waited in the silence. No answer came, just the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make. Outside her window, the moon hung low and heavy. Inside her heart, a war was beginning, between what she needed to survive and what she knew was right. She didn't know it yet, but that war was about to end. Because the next morning, everything would change. The next morning came cold and quiet. Victoria was sweeping the hallway when she heard it. A soft thud, then nothing. She stopped, listened. Another sound like a muffled cry. Her heart jumped. She followed the sound to the garden door. And there was Sofia, sitting on the stone bench, her small body hunched over, both hands pressed tight against her right ear. Her face was twisted in agony. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, but no sound came from her mouth. She was crying in complete silence. Victoria dropped the broom and ran to her. She knelt in front of her, her hands shaking. Sofia, Sofia, look at me. She spoke and signed at the same time. Sofia opened her eyes, red, wet, full of pain. Victoria gently signed, your ear. Sofia nodded, more tears falling. Victoria's chest felt like it was being crushed. She signed carefully, can I look? I'll be gentle. I promise. Sofia hesitated. Fear flickered across her face. But then she leaned forward. She signed, trust. This child, who had been poked and prodded by doctors her whole life, trusted her. Victoria swallowed hard. She tilted Sofia's head gently toward the morning light and looked. There it was, deep inside her ear canal. Something dark, dense, glistening like wet stone. Her breath stopped. It was bigger than before, clearer. How had every doctor missed this? How had every scan overlooked it? Victoria's mind raced back to Marcus, her cousin. The blockage that had kept him deaf for 6 years. The simple procedure that changed his life forever. Her hands trembled. She signed slowly to Sofia. "There's something in your ear. Something that shouldn't be there." Sofia's eyes went wide. "We need to tell your father," Victoria signed. Panic exploded across Sofia's face. Her hands moved fast, frantic. "No, no doctors, please. They hurt me. Always hurt. Never help." Victoria's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She understood. 8 years of specialists. 8 years of procedures. 8 years of pain with no relief. Sofia had learned that help meant suffering. Victoria took Sofia's small hands in hers, looked into her eyes. "I would never hurt you," she whispered. "Never." Sofia stared at her, and slowly her breathing calmed. But the fear didn't leave her eyes. Victoria sat with her until the tears dried, until her hands stopped shaking. Then she walked back inside, her mind spinning. She knew what she'd seen. She knew what it meant. But what could she do? Tell Marco? He'd call more specialists, the same ones who'd missed it for years. Do nothing? Watch this child suffer in silence? That night, Victoria didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her grandmother's voice echoing in her head. "God doesn't always send help in fancy packages, baby girl. Sometimes he sends it through folks with nothing but willing hands." Victoria closed her eyes. Her hands were willing, but was she brave enough to use them? 3 days passed. Victoria couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely think. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. That dark mass lodged deep, blocking everything. And Sofia's face, the pain, the silent tears. On the 3rd night, she sat on the edge of her bed, Bible open in her lap. But the words blurred. All she could see was Marcus, her cousin, deaf for 6 years, written off by every doctor, until someone finally looked. One procedure, one moment of attention, and his world exploded into sound. Victoria's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knew what she'd seen in Sofia's ear. She knew. But who was she? A maid. No degree, no training, no right to touch that girl. If she was wrong, if she hurt her, she'd go to prison. If she was right, but Marco found out she'd acted without permission, she'd lose everything. Her job, her income, her grandmother's care. "Lord," she whispered, voice cracking. "What do you want from me?" Silence, just the ticking of the clock. She thought about her brother, Daniel, dead at 14. He'd been sick for months, complaining of pain, but they couldn't afford doctors, couldn't afford help. Victoria watched him fade, watched him struggle to breathe, watched him try to speak words that wouldn't come. He died in her arms, silent, just like Sofia's world. She'd promised herself that day, promised God never again. She'd never stand by while a child suffered. But this was different. This wasn't her brother. This was a mafia boss's daughter. And she was nobody. Victoria closed the Bible, stood up, walked to the window. The moon hung heavy outside, spilling silver light across the gardens. Somewhere in this mansion, a little girl was sleeping with pain in her ear and silence in her world. And she was the only one who'd noticed, the only one who'd seen. "God," she breathed. "I'm scared. I'm so scared. But if this is what you're asking." Her voice trailed off. She thought of her grandmother's words. "The Lord doesn't call the equipped, child. He equips the called." Victoria wiped her eyes, made a decision. Tomorrow, if Sofia showed pain again, she would act. She would trust what God had shown her, even if it cost her everything. She climbed into bed, heart pounding. Sleep wouldn't come, but peace did. A strange, heavy peace. The kind that comes when you've decided to step off the cliff and trust that God will catch you. Tomorrow was coming, and with it, the moment that would change everything. The next evening came too quickly. Marco was away on business, some meeting in the city that would keep him late. The house was quiet, more quiet than usual. Victoria was folding linens in the hallway when she heard it. A thump. Her heart stopped. She ran toward the sound. Sofia lay on the hallway floor, curled up, both hands pressed to her ear, face contorted in agony. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Silent tears. Victoria dropped to her knees beside her. "I'm here, baby." I'm here. She cradled Sofia's head gently, tilting it toward the lamplight. The dark mass was clearly visible now, swollen, pressing against her ear canal. Victoria's hands trembled. This was it. The moment. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the sterilized tweezers she'd taken from the first aid kit 3 days ago, just in case. Her breath came in short bursts. Lord, she whispered. Guide my hands, please. Sofia looked up at her, eyes wide, scared, but trusting. Victoria signed with one hand. I won't hurt you, I promise. Sofia nodded slowly. Victoria steadied herself, took a breath, and gently, carefully moved the tweezers into Sofia's ear canal. Her hand shook. She could feel it, the dark mass, dense and sticky. She hooked it gently, pulled. Resistance. Her heart hammered. She pulled again, slow, careful, and then release. Something slid free. It landed in her palm. Dark, wet, biological. Years of buildup that had stolen Sofia's hearing. Victoria stared at it. Her stomach turned, but before she could react, Sofia gasped. A real gasp, audible, loud. Sofia's hand flew to her ear. Her eyes went wide, wider than Victoria had ever seen them. She sat up suddenly, looking around the hallway like she'd never seen it before. Then she pointed at the grandfather clock on the wall. The one that had been ticking her whole life. The one she'd never heard. Her mouth opened. A sound came out. Rough, broken, unpracticed, but real. Tick, she whispered. Victoria's tears fell. Yes, baby. That's the clock. You can hear it. Sofia's whole body trembled. She touched her throat, felt the vibration of her own voice. Her eyes filled with wonder and fear and something else. Hope. Her mouth opened again. One word. The first real word she'd ever spoken. Papa. Victoria sobbed. She pulled her close, holding her as she shook, as sounds flooded her world for the first time in 8 years. You can hear, Victoria whispered into her hair. Thank you, Jesus. You can hear. Sofia clung to her. And then footsteps. Heavy, fast, coming down the hallway. Victoria looked up. Marco Romano stood in the doorway, face white as death, eyes locked on Sofia on the floor, and the blood on Victoria's hands. What have you done? Marco's voice shook the walls. He rushed forward, pushing Victoria aside roughly. She stumbled, hit the wall. He grabbed Sofia by the shoulders. What did she do to you? Sofia flinched at the sound. So loud, so sharp, overwhelming after years of silence. But her mouth opened. Papa, I can hear you. Marco froze. His entire body went rigid. What? Sofia reached up, touched his face with her small hand. Your voice? Is that your voice? Marco's legs buckled. He was about to collapse. But then his eyes landed on Victoria's hands again. Blood, tweezers, dark mass sitting in her palm. Terror overtook wonder. Protective instinct kicked in. She had touched his daughter. Security. Now. 2 guards appeared instantly, Marco and Tony, their faces hard. Get her away from my daughter. Victoria's heart shattered. Sir, please listen to me. I didn't hurt her. I helped her. Look. She held out her palm, showing him the blockage. This was inside her ear. This is why she couldn't hear. I removed it. You're not a doctor. Marco roared. You could have killed her. The guards grabbed Victoria's arms. Sofia screamed. Actually screamed. For the first time ever. No. Don't take her. Papa, no. The sound of his daughter's voice, loud, desperate, real, stopped Marco cold for a moment. But fear was too strong, trust broken. Take her to the security office. Call the police. Victoria didn't resist. She didn't fight. As they dragged her away, she looked back at Sofia. She mouthed, It's okay. You're going to be okay. Sofia sobbed. Loud, messy, wet sobs. The first sounds of grief she'd ever made. The sound broke something in Marco, but he didn't stop them. He gathered Sofia in his arms, holding her tight, trying to understand what had just happened. His daughter was making sounds. Real sounds. Crying, speaking, hearing. It was impossible, but it was real. At the hospital, doctors swarmed around Sofia. Tests, scans, examinations. Marco paced the hallway, his mind spinning out of control. His daughter was speaking, hearing, responding to sounds. Couldn't be real, but it was. A nurse approached him. "Mr. Romano, the doctor needs to speak with you urgently." He followed her into a small office. Dr. Matthews sat behind the desk, face grim. "Mr. Romano, I don't know how to say this. Just say it." The doctor slid a folder across the desk. "This is Sofia's scan from 3 years ago." Marco opened it with shaking hands. There, circled in red, was a notation. "Dense obstruction noted in right ear canal. Recommend immediate removal." Marco's blood turned to ice. "Someone saw this?" Dr. Matthews nodded slowly. "It appears so, but there's no follow-up. No procedure scheduled. Your account was flagged for ongoing treatment protocol." The words hit Marco like a bullet. Ongoing treatment protocol. Understanding crashed over him like a wave. They'd known. They'd seen the blockage. And they'd left it there. "Because my money was too good," Marco whispered. "Because my desperation was profitable. They kept my daughter deaf. On purpose." Dr. Matthews said nothing, but his silence said everything. Marco's hands trembled. All those years. All those millions. All those specialists shaking their heads. Lies. All lies. Calculated extraction of wealth from a desperate father. "And the one person who told the truth," Marco said, his voice breaking, "who actually helped, is sitting in my security office waiting to be arrested." He stood abruptly. "Where are you going?" the doctor asked. Marco didn't answer. He had a maid to find and a lifetime of apologies to make. Victoria sat alone in the security office, hands folded, head bowed. She wasn't praying for herself. She was praying for Sofia, that her hearing would hold, that her father would understand, that the girl would finally know what it felt like to live in a world full of sound. She accepted whatever was coming. She'd done what God asked. Peace surrounded her even in this moment. The door opened. She looked up. Marco Romano stood there. But he wasn't the same man who dragged her away an hour ago. His eyes were red, his face broken, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who just watched his whole world crumble and rebuild in the same breath. Victoria. Her name, spoken softly, almost reverently. She stood. "Mr. Romano, I can explain." "Don't." He walked toward her slowly. "Don't explain. Don't apologize. Don't say a word." He stopped in front of her. This man, this mafia boss who'd built an empire on fear, who controlled half the city, who ordered deaths with phone calls, fell to his knees. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Victoria's breath caught. She couldn't process what she was seeing. "The doctors knew," Marco said, voice cracking. "They saw the blockage years ago. They left it there because my money was too good to cure. My desperation was too profitable." Tears streamed down his face. "I trusted them. Trusted credentials and degrees and expensive hospitals. I threw millions at my daughter's problem and never once stopped to actually look at her." He looked up at Victoria. "But you did. You saw her. You saw her pain. You paid attention when no one else bothered. When I didn't bother." Victoria's own tears fell. "I just loved her, sir. That's all." Marco shook his head. "No, that's everything." He stood slowly. "I've spent 8 years trying to buy a miracle. And God sent one through the woman I hired to clean my floors." Victoria wiped her eyes. "God uses the willing, Mr. Romano. That's what my grandmother always said. He doesn't need your credentials. He needs your hands." Marco nodded, really understanding for the first time. She was right. He extended his hand, helped Victoria to her feet. For a moment they just stood there, guard and maid, power and humility, both transformed. "Come with me," Marco said. "There's someone who needs to see you." They walked back to the hospital room together, side by side. Sofia sat on the bed, headphones on for the first time in her life, listening to music. Her face was pure wonder, like a child discovering color. When she saw them, she ripped off the headphones and ran, straight to Victoria. She wrapped her arms around Victoria's waist. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was rough, unpracticed, beautiful. Victoria knelt down and held her tight. "You were always worth hearing, baby. Always." Sofia pulled back and looked at her father. "Papa." I can hear your heart. It's beating fast. Marco dropped to his knees and pulled his daughter close. For the first time in 8 years, Sofia heard her father cry. She heard the sobs, the broken breathing, the sound of a man releasing 8 years of grief and guilt and love he couldn't express. She heard it all. Victoria stood quietly beside them, watching father and daughter reconnect, and finally let herself breathe. God had answered her prayer. Not with money, not with medicine, not with power, but with willing hands and a faithful heart. Marco looked up at Victoria over Sofia's shoulder and mouthed, "Thank you." Victoria nodded, and for the first time since she'd arrived at the Romano estate, she felt peace. Sometimes that's all a miracle needs.